Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a combination of a non-spoiler book review and then a spoilery chat for Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. For those of you who are interested in just jumping right to the spoilers, I'll go ahead and have the time up on the screen and a timestamp down below if you need it. But before I get into it, I am very curious to see all of your thoughts about this duology because I always hear a mix of people saying they like the first one better, some people say they like the second, and then some just like both of them. So I'm going to put up a little poll for you guys to vote in. Did you like the first, the second, or both equally? For me, it's a little bit difficult to discern my specific feelings about one over the other because they really do just feel like they were meant to go together. It's not like you have a huge time between the first and the second one. It picks up right where the first one leaves off. And there's definitely a very similar writing style and maybe less writing style, more storytelling approach to the first and second. They both are very similar in that when you're getting to know the characters, you get a combination of them in present day and then them kind of musing on their pasts. I was thinking that we were gonna, for the most part, sort of, I don't want to say be done with that as if it was trash or something, but I guess I was just expecting to not really have that because we kind of already knew everybody after the first one with the exception of the character Wylan. And that really wasn't the case. We still spent a lot of time reflecting on things with the characters, kind of getting even deeper with a lot of their things. What I do think was kind of something that some people might not love about this one is with the first, you have this set heist plot line. So even though it's kind of taking its time to get there, that is still the ultimate mission. And in the second one, the plot kind of took lots of twists and turns where, okay, this is our mission right now. Oh shoot, this just happened, so now this is our mission. Oh, we got a wrench in our plans, now we gotta change it. Some people are gonna like that way more because it keeps you on the edge of your seat and you don't really know what's gonna happen next. But I do think for some readers that perhaps this will be frustrating because it'll be like whiplash. You'll be thinking this is where you're going and then things will change and you go over here. Some people just want to know, all right, where's the direction we're going? I don't mind a few hiccups, but as long as we're still always going there. And because that's not what you get, I can definitely see it being a pro or a con. I also think that because both of these books are so character driven that if you prefer a story that is plot driven or if you don't really care to get to know all the characters that much, might not be a story for you. And then I also think that even if you love character driven stories, if you don't like these characters, that's always one of the downsides to character driven stories. I ended up liking most of the characters, or at the very least, I ended up really liking their arcs or their interactions with one another. I also really liked some of the more serious things that Leigh Bardugo tackles. She really has characters that are flawed, and I liked seeing that, and I liked seeing how these characters either fell deeper into it or were coming away from it. I wasn't really sure if they were going to come away from it or if they were going to end up just getting even worse. So I liked getting to see that. I think she did a really good job with gray morality. I think she did a good job tackling some more serious things, but it definitely takes some patience. It might not make for the most fun of reads. And again, if you're just not really that interested in these characters, I could see it not being something you would love. I'll give some final thoughts at the very end, but getting into the spoilers now. So if you haven't read it or if you don't want spoilers, just fast forward to the end. But getting into spoilers now, I'm going to break this up into kind of sort of negatives and positives, and I'm going to start with the negatives. And they're all pretty small, nitpicky things, some of which, I would say most of which are just personal preference things, or they're things that have to do with, oh, this character frustrated me, and it's not necessarily a matter of like, Leigh Bardugo sucks. I'm going to start with a character that I didn't love. And I asked in a vlog recently if you guys could figure out who it was. Put the poll results over here. It's Jasper. I do not like Jasper. I think he got a little better. He had some growth in the end. But out of all of the characters, I like Kaz is a messed up guy. As a reader, I'm like, poor Kaz has just had a rough life and stuff. But in real life, I'm sure I would hate the guy. But Jasper's a character that even in his head, I'm like, dude, come on. So there's pretty much everything about Jasper is frustrating to me. I understand that people struggle with addiction, and I am by no means saying that his gambling addiction is something to just be like, can't you just get over it? Like, just stop, because there's way more to addiction than that. And I'm not going to get further into that. That's not my issue with him. Addiction's a real thing that lots of people struggle with, and I appreciated Bardugo showing that in his character. So it's not necessarily that frustrates me, but it kind of sort of plays into my other things about him that do frustrate me. So his dad, I actually found this to be a positive in the story, is when he sees his dad again, and his dad is just so sweet. I got pretty emotional when he saw his dad again, and he just was like, oh no, my dad's gonna be so disappointed in me. I can't tell him what I've done, how I've basically ruined my dad's whole life. And his dad was just so sweet. And he's like, son, I just love you. Are you okay? I was worried about you. And then when you find out about his past, it's not like it turns out like his dad's a terrible person who blah, blah, blah. It's not like that kind of stuff happens. It's just, his dad's just a really nice guy who really loves his son. He's super hardworking on his farm, and he lost his wife who he loved very much, right? So I loved his dad. I also loved that Jasper loved his dad, and he felt really terrible about what had happened, because I was like, you kind of should feel pretty bad. But there's a line in the book that Jasper says to his father that I was like, nope, I do not like this. And that was when he tells his dad that, because his dad's like, where did this come from? Like, I didn't raise you to be like this, because, you know, Jasper's kind of a mess. And he tells him, yeah, Dad, you kind of did. Because his dad always warned him to probably hide his Grisha powers because of what happened to his mom. It doesn't take a genius to see why his dad would tell him to do this. And it's not like Jasper is unaware of why his dad told him to do this. He understands it. But at this point, Jasper is old enough, I think, that he needs to take some responsibility. That line bothered me so much. And I'm not saying people who have really amazing parents can't end up through their life experiences making some mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes in life. But what the heck, I just was so mad when he blamed his dad, and he told him, like, you did kind of raise me to be like this, Dad. You taught me how to lie. It's like your dad didn't force you to be addicted to things. Not like he like held you down, was like, son, gamble now. It's not like that's what happened. I do want to add though, that in the end, I thought it was definitely a good idea that Jasper didn't just take all the money for himself, because he is learning, I need to be better, I need help, and I think he did the right thing. I also didn't like Jasper and Wylan, and I feel kind of bad because I like Wylan so much, and I want Wylan to be happy, but I just don't like him and Jasper together. They just don't make sense to me, because Jasper in the first book spent pretty much the whole book either thinking like, that Wylan's kind of cute, or being like, you're just some snooty rich boy who knows nothing. It's not like he was super poor and had a really tough life, and he just, that Wylan can't relate and stuff, because like, dude, your life was pretty good, and your father worked really hard so you could go get a good education, and you're the one who blew it. And now you're looking at Wylan, who, yes, is growing up with money and some privilege, and you're just like, you're just some naive little boy. You're some naive little boy. He's always picking on him, and then being like, you're kind of cute, though. And I'm just like, no, I'm not really into this. I'm not really into it at all. And then Jasper kind of finds out at the end of the first book that, it turns out Wylan's dad is a total a-hole. And then in the second book, then it's like, I can connect to you now because you have experienced hardships. Like, dude, come on, everybody's experienced hardships before. It's just you didn't know what Wylan's was because he didn't just tell you immediately, and because you couldn't see it. But you just kind of made fun of him all the time before he opened. It wasn't even really like he opened up willingly. It's like they all found out at the end, because that was what they had to find out when revealing Van Eck being so spiteful to his son. Anyway, so I already just feel like they don't make that much sense. But I also feel like throughout the story, they were hinting that Wylan would be good for you, Jasper. He'd be good for you. And I am not opposed to that idea of people being good for other people in relationships. I just don't like the concept of being reliant on another person for you to be a good person. And maybe that's not what was being implied, but it's what it felt like sometimes, because Wylan, to me, he was really good. He was really good, and he was one of those sweet but strong characters where he struggles and He definitely has things that he is trying to overcome. And he's very self-conscious about a lot of things. But at the end of the day, he's taking on a world that he knows nothing about. I don't know, just all of it. I'm like, oh, poor Wylan, poor Wylan. And he's so nice. And part of me just wishes he could find somebody, I don't know, that's not Jasper. There's a line toward the end of the book that Jasper says once they have basically all their money, but you know, Matthias died, and that's gonna be a whole other thing I'll talk about. But there's a line where they're all just kind of reflecting on everything, and Jasper says, like, I kind of thought it would feel different once I had money. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he says. And and then Wylan tells him, well, I could have told you that. I could have told you things wouldn't change just because you have money. And that's where I'm like, yeah, why is Jasper so stupid? Sorry if you guys really like Jasper, if you really like Jasper and Wylan, but there's a part of me that's like, you haven't figured that out yet. You've seen so much. You saw Wylan's whole thing with his mom. You saw how messed up his dad can be. You saw the way his dad, in front of all these other people, were like, my son's a useless idiot. You've seen how awful Van Eck is. And it's not like money changed that for Wylan. Yet you still would say that. You would still say that in the end. I'm just like, come on, man. Like, I know money makes some things easier, but it's not like your whole life is fine just because you have money. Jasper just really he annoys me a lot. One last kind of thing that has to do with them is I personally was not a fan of the whole Jasper accidentally kissing Kuwei instead of Wylan. I thought that was kind of unnecessary tension and didn't really serve the plot very much. It just didn't feel like it needed, I don't know, I didn't personally feel like it needed to happen. So I didn't really love that. I also just felt like Kuwei just existed to serve the plot in some means. I mean, you weren't going to get to know everything about Kuwei in the first book, and I wasn't wanting a whole backstory for this character, but the interactions with him were extremely minimal, which I didn't mind, except for that made that scene where apparently he's got the hots for Jasper, just felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. Along those same lines of things feeling like they came kind of out of nowhere, it didn't really serve the plot. I did not really care for the Denyasha and the like winged people that were fighting with Jasper. That stuff, to me, it just felt like we needed to find something to have happen, because the way the book goes back and forth between all these point of views, it just seemed like, oh, well, now that we're with Inej, we need some kind of opponent for Inej. We need some kind of thing to match her. And then with Jasper, it felt similarly to me, where we need something to distract Jasper for this one moment. Otherwise, it's just Jasper going from point A to point B, and we need something more intense to happen while he's going from point A to point B. And I didn't love it. Those things right here are a little bit more of the nitpicky stuff that I was talking about, and I said some of it really isn't a big deal whatsoever. And again, it's all personal preference. There were a couple other things that were personal preference. I didn't love the foreshadowing to Matthias. Is it Matthias or Matthias? Because the audiobook says Matthias, and I like Matthias better, so I'm just, whatever, the blonde Fjordan. So the foreshadowing of his death, it felt like we were supposed to think Nina was going to die, but then obviously he dies, and that, I'll get to that, because I didn't like him dying. That sounds terrible. I liked the way it was handled. But the foreshadowing of it made that feel so much less of a no kind of moment, because the whole time I'm like, well, what else were those dreams supposed to mean then? And while I do like the way, for the most part, all of that happened with him, I kind of wish a little bit that the other characters had thought about him a little bit more after he died, because obviously Nina leaves and then they don't really think about him at all. It made me kind of sad. It talks about how Inej is staying with Wylan. Sometimes they sing dirty songs, and Wylan brought his mom back home, and they're getting things sorted out. Sometimes she's still a little loopy, whatever. And they don't really think about, oh, this guy is dead now, and our friend's just off on a boat somewhere. Hope she's okay. Like, they don't really seem to be too sad about that. And I understand that he wasn't as important of a character to them as he was to Nina, but they went through a lot with this guy, and I just feel like maybe they'd at least think about it, because a lot of times when somebody, even if you're not super close to them, a lot of times when somebody passes away, it's kind of a shock initially, and then you keep going, you keep moving on with life, but then all of a sudden it'll hit you again, like, oh my gosh, this person, they're gone now, and then they didn't, I don't know, maybe I missed him. I wanted them to miss him a little bit more. I think I would have liked seeing a little bit more of Wylan and his mom at the end, because that way, it's not that I expected a perfect little bow to wrap everything up and have her be like, I'm good now, thanks for rescuing me, Wylan. I just think if I had seen their reunion when she finally sees her son again, or if I had at least been able to see Wylan getting to know, oh, we made it through, I get to bring my mom back, I think that would have tied his arc all together so much better, because then it would have shown a little bit more of his character and then his mother, and instead the whole plot line with his mom, it felt more like it was to show us how bad his dad was. And she's still a person though, and so for her to have felt a little bit more real, or for her to have, at least for Wylan, for her to have felt more significant, I think I would have liked seeing that. Which I know it seems like I'm being really negative. That's just because I lumped all the negative stuff together. I actually really I loved this book. I loved it a lot. All right. Inej getting to see her parents it's one of my favorite scenes of any book. And I didn't cry. I've never cried reading a book. But I got close. And I was in public. So I am not a public crier. If I feel myself getting emotional in public, I bury it all. I bury it all really deep down. I was in public. I was getting my car worked on, and I was reading the book, finishing it up, and I got to that scene, and I'm like, why are there people around right now? And I had to like immediately keep going, because I was like, if I dwell on this, I'm gonna get really emotional. Inej is such a quiet, strong person. And she, even through all the pain that she's had to go through, she has not accepted, well, I'm just a bad person now. I'm just a bad person. She's like, no, I've done bad things, but I believe that I can still do good. And she sees other people, and she doesn't just immediately dismiss them. She sees they can do good too. I'm not going to give up on these people. So at the end, she's so compassionate. She's always compassionate toward other people. And at the end, when Kaz gives her ship, and he gives her the little thing to see her parents, and she just like almost falls. And then when he holds her up, even though you know that's gotta be super hard for him, because he's just going, you guys know, it's not easy for him. That moment, I'm like, oh yes, this is the kind of thing I love in books with characters and character relationships. It could never be smutty between the two of them, at least not in these first two books. I'm sure there's fan fiction out there. But it was never gonna be that. It shows more of how important and significant other things in relationships are. And that gesture toward her, and that showing of, I want to do something for you because you've always done things for everybody else. When she sees him and she's just crying, oh, it was so good. I really liked that Leigh Bardugo, it wasn't a matter of, I'm going to heal you. Neither one of them were going to fix the other person. And I respected that that's how she wrote it, because it's not, I don't like it when it's written like that in stories, because in life, a lot of times when you are struggling with something, you can of course have other people there to help you and to support you. At the end of the day, they can't change how you think or how you feel. And because both of them have gone through so much trauma, they weren't going to just fix the other person. It's not like by caring about them, all of a sudden all of that trauma just goes out the window. But it was both of them knowing they needed to get better. And so him coming to her without his gloves, not like he just was like, oh, we're gonna do it now, Inej, or something. It wasn't that, again, because it wasn't that. That's not what the relationship was. It was just the showing that I'm trying to work through this, and then she's trying to work through things too. But they're like helping one another, but they're not doing it for the other because they can't do it for the other person. I just really liked it. And then the other relationship in the book, Matthias and Nina. A lot of their relationship was kind of like, I'm so sexy, and I know that you think so too. That's kind of how Nina was, and she genuinely cared about him. They did have some very deep connections between the two of them. I'm not trying to dismiss that. And I really loved that when it was Matthias's characters, when it was his point of view, it wasn't just like he's all better now and all of that weird stuff they put in his head, all that hate that they embedded in his brain, that didn't just poof disappear. He would see Grisha and his first instinct would be unnatural. And then he's like, no, not unnatural. That's just what I'm trained to see. So I really appreciated that. I also liked that Matthias, he wanted so badly not only to improve himself, but to improve other Fjerdans' lives and to make them see that having this hateful spite and anger toward all of an entire group of other people, it wasn't a healthy, good way to live. And he was so forgiving. It was just so sad then when he died, because you're like, oh man, even though I've heard people talk about Nina in the next one, and I'm like, well, shoot, I don't hear anybody talking about Matthias, so that probably means he's gonna die. He wanted to make the world a better place. And he seemed like, now that he's recovering from basically being brainwashed, he seemed like a pretty nice guy. I absolutely loved the parts where they kidnapped Alice. He was so nice to her, and he was like rubbing her feet. They're like, ugh, pregnant people, geez. And then Kaz, that was one of my favorite scenes of the book. It's just the fact that Kaz, it kind of says it in passing, but she wouldn't stop singing and he just throws his hands up in the air. Also, when Kaz loses his temper and him and Jasper fight and he calls him Geordie, that scene, I really liked it. I thought it was almost funny the way everybody else just backed up. And Wylan's like, why isn't anybody stopping this? Well, he's not using his cane. So it's totally fine that they have this fight. Getting back though, I kind of switched gears. Getting back to the Matthias death. I thought it was so sad that Nina wanted to use her new kind of powers over death on him. When he's shot and he comes to her and then she sees the wound. In my head, I'm like, heal him. And then I'm like, wait, she can't. Oh no. Again, his character growth and arc of wanting, even in death, he was so at peace because he's, a good person now, and he didn't want other fear. He just didn't want the pain to continue, and basically his dying wish was, please don't let this continue. Do what you can to show other people the way you helped me see. And anyway, so final thoughts on the story. Overall, I know that this is very hyped. I really liked it. It's got a lot of my personal tastes. It's got kind of the slower build with the characters. It spends a lot of time getting to know the characters, being with them, going with them through some very difficult things, some really deep-rooted issues. And I said this about the first one, but I think it's one of the best portrayals I've seen of being a morally gray character, and also showing how some people end up in the situations they're in, how they end up kind of becoming the very thing that they used to despise, and then can they come out of it? I think it's got a lot of what I really like. It's not epic in scope, and usually I like that kind of stuff, and I do think that the plot at times I would have liked maybe a little bit more prep for certain things. Not that I needed to always know what was going to happen, but sometimes I felt like I had to wait to see what the characters were going to do because I was purposefully kept in the dark, so it'd be more suspenseful. But overall, I really liked it. Now I really want to read King of Scars. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.